Have you ever noticed how the things that pull us in the fastest are often the things we understand the least? That's no accident. The most trouble in your house. It is the bow weld is filled with attractions that are carefully polished, carefully presented to capture your attention before you ever think to question them. They shine, they impress, they feel right. And that feeling, that instant sense of this is good for me, can be one of the most convincing illusions you will ever encounter because appearance is powerful. The most trouble in your house, it is the something can look solid without having any real foundation. Something can sound convincing without carrying any truth. Something can feel perfectly aligned with your desires while quietly moving you in the wrong direction. And the danger lies not in the attraction itself, but in how easily we surrender our judgment to it. We see confidence, so we assume competence. We see beauty, so we assume value. We see ease, so we assume safety. But life doesn't work that way. A polished surface tells you nothing about durability. A strong first impression tells you nothing about long-term consequence. What captivates your eyes and emotions in a moment may have no capacity to sustain you over time. Yet many people make life-altering decisions based entirely on that first wave of excitement, that rush of certainty created by something that simply looks or feels appealing. Think about it. How many times have people pursued something because it looked glamorous, only to discover the reality was exhausting? How many times has someone trusted a confident voice, only to learn confidence and credibility are not the same? When this taken presentation for substance, it happens every day. The human mind is wired to respond to what stands out, to what sparkles, to what feels rewarding in the immediate sense. That's natural. That's human, but growth requires something more than instinct. It demands discernment, the ability to separate what attracts from what truly benefits. And that separation is not always comfortable. And because questioning appeal means resisting the pleasure of instant acceptance, it means slowing down when everything inside you wants to rush forward. It means asking the harder questions. What is this really offering me? What is this built on? Where does this lead if I follow it long enough? Real strength is revealed in that moment of examination. Anyone can be impressed. Anyone can be captivated. That not everyone is willing to look beyond the surface, to challenge the initial feeling, to entertain the possibility that something attractive may not be constructive. That kind of awareness requires confidence, not the loud confidence of appearance, but the quiet confidence of self-control. And self-control changes everything. When you stop being hypnotized by what merely looks good, you begin to recognize patterns others miss. You start to see that many distractions rely entirely on presentation. Remove the shine, remove the excitement, remove the emotional pull, and very little remains. What once seemed irresistible suddenly appears ordinary, sometimes even hollow. That shift in perception is powerful. It protects you from investing your time, energy, and trust in things that cannot truly support your progress. It prevents you from confusing temporary stimulation with lasting value. It allows you to move through life with intention rather than reaction. Because not everything impressive is important. Some things exist purely to capture attention. Some opportunities exist purely to exploit impulse. Some paths appear extraordinary only because they are designed to trigger your immediate desires. And without awareness, it is easy to mistake intensity for significance. But intensity fades. What truly strengthens your life may not always announce itself with glitter or drama. Often, it appears quieter, less sensational, less immediately thrilling. Yet it carries depth of stability and long-term benefit, qualities that do not always compete well with surface appeal, but ultimately define meaningful progress. So the question becomes personal in your house. It is when you're out the match you? Do you automatically trust the feeling, or do you step back and examine it? Do you allow presentation to dictate perception, or do you train yourself to look deeper, to think longer, to see more clearly? The primal in your house, it is that choice determines direction, is easily led. A mind guided solely by attraction is easily led. A mind guided by discernment is difficult to mislead. And the difference between the two is not intelligence, it is awareness. There is a silent force that has redirected more lives than failure ever has, more than lack of talent, more than lack of opportunity. It moves quickly, speaks loudly, and demands no reflection. It is impulse, that sudden urge to act, to respond, to decide before thought has fully arrived. And in the moment, it feels powerful. It feels certain. It feels like confidence. But very often, it is nothing more than emotion wearing the costume of clarity. The trouble with impulse is not that it exists. It's the most trouble in your house. It is human to feel urgency, excitement, frustration, desire. The trouble is how easily we mistake the intensity of a feeling for the correctness of an action. Something feels right, so we assume it is right. Something feels necessary, so we assume it cannot wait. But something feels uncomfortable, so we assume we must escape it immediately. But feelings are fast, consequences. Trouble in your house, it is our slow, single unexamined reaction can produce outcomes that linger for years. Words spoken in seconds can echo in relationships indefinitely. Decisions made in moments of emotional heat can shape entire futures. Yet when the feeling surges, the mind narrows, perspective shrinks, the long view disappears. All that remains is the desire to act now. That is why the pause is so powerful. Not dramatic, not complicated, just a brief interruption between stimulus and response. A small space where thought is allowed to breathe before action takes control. And in that space, something remarkable happens. Emotion loses its grip, clarity begins to return, and choices regain their weight. A pause is not hesitation born of fear. It is discipline born of awareness. It is the recognition that not every urge deserves obedience, that not every emotion demands immediate expression. The most trouble in your house, it is that not every opportunity evaporates, if not seized instantly. Strength is often portrayed as decisiveness, as rapid action, as bold movement. There's a deeper strength, quieter yet far more transformative. The strength to wait, to observe, to think when everything inside you pushes for speed. Consider how many regrets share the same origin. I didn't think. I reacted too quickly. I got carried away. Rarely do people lament the extra moment taken to reflect. Rarely does someone say, my mistake was that I paused too long and considered too carefully. No. The damage almost always comes from movement without reflection, because life rewards thoughtful action, not rushed reaction. Time has a unique ability to expose what emotion conceals. What feels urgent may prove trivial. What feels irresistible may lose its intensity. What feels catastrophic may reveal itself as manageable. The pause invites time into the decision, and time is one of the greatest allies of wisdom, yet many recises. Why? Because pausing can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like uncertainty. It can feel like losing momentum. But that discomfort is often the very signal that reflection is needed. The mind addicted to speed fears stillness. The ego drawn to immediacy resists delay. But clarity thrives in that brief stillness. And the beauty of the pause is its simplicity. No special training. No extraordinary skill, just a conscious decision to breathe before reacting, to question before accepting, to evaluate before committing. A few seconds, a few minutes, sometimes longer. Whatever distance is required for reason to reclaim its role from emotion. In that space, you regain authority. You stop being driven by the loudest feeling in the room. You stop being controlled by external pressure or internal restlessness. Begin acting from intention rather than impulse. And that shift, though invisible to others, changes everything about the direction of your life. Because when you master the pause, you master reaction. And when you master reaction, you master consequence. But deeply seductive about the promise of an easy path. The idea that progress can be made without struggle, that rewards can be gained without sacrifice, that achievement can be reached without enduring the discomfort of growth. It is a very human instinct, the desire for efficiency, for relief, for shortcuts that bypass effort yet deliver results. But ease can be deceptive. Anything that appears to offer significant reward with minimal demand should be only big you awaken your curiosity, not your excitement. Because life in its most reliable patterns does not distribute lasting value without requiring proportional investment. The growth requires pressure. Master requires repetition. Strength requires resistance. Remove the challenge, and you often remove the very process that produces something meaningful. Yet the easy option often feels irresistible. Why? Because effort is uncomfortable, discipline is demanding, patience is exhausting. The mind naturally gravitates toward what conserves energy and avoids friction. When two roads appear, one steep and uncertain, the other smooth and inviting, instinct pulls toward comfort. It feels rational. It feels efficient. It feels like intelligence at work. But the smoother road can hide the greater cost. Shortcuts frequently postpone difficulty rather than eliminate it. What is avoided early must often be confronted later, sometimes with greater intensity. It is not built through effort, remains fragile. Success not earned through process often proves unsustainable. Foundations not reinforced by challenge rarely withstand pressure. Consider any enduring accomplishment. Consider any enduring accomplishment. Behind it lies preparation. Behind preparation lies repetition. Behind preparation lies repetition, lies persistence through moments of boredom, frustration, and doubt. None of it glamorous, none of it effortless, yet entirely responsible for the strength and stability of the outcome. The ease rarely produces resilience. And resilience is what sustains progress when circumstances shift, when pressure rises, when unpredictability enters the picture. By resilience, even impressive beginnings collapse under strain. Without depth, speed becomes vulnerability. But the easy path rarely emphasizes its weaknesses. It highlights convenience. It emphasizes speed. It magnifies reward. The hidden trade-offs, the missing skills, the fragile, found missing skills, the deferred consequences remain invisible until reality intervenes. And by then, momentum may already be lost. This is not an argument against efficiency or this is not an argument against efficiency or intelligent strategy. Wisdom absolutely seeks better methods, smarter approaches, improved systems. But there is a difference between intelligent people in your house. It is to the simplification and the illusion of effort-free progress. One respects reality, the other ignores it. And anything valuable requires something from you: time, focus, energy, consistency, learning, adaptation. These are not obstacles. They are ingredients. They shape capacity. They build competence. They convert potential into durability. Remove them, and the result may look impressive for a moment, but lack the strength to endure. The challenge itself is often the gift. Resistance develops capability. Difficulty sharpens judgment. It builds confidence rooted in substance rather than appearance. The very experiences many seek to avoid are frequently those that create stability, depth, and long-term advantage. But comfort clouds this understanding. The absence of friction feels like progress, even when no meaningful development is occurring. The movement feels like advancement, even when direction is flawed. The easy option satisfies immediately, while the demanding path tests patience and patience. And patience is one of the rarest forms of discipline. So the question becomes one of awareness. When something promises rapid reward with minimal effort, do you celebrate or do you examine? Do you ask what is required beneath the surface? Do you question what is being exchanged? Do you consider whether the absence of difficulty is a benefit or a warning? Enter your house. It is because reality maintains a consistent rule. Lasting outcomes are built not granted. They emerge from sustained engagement with challenge, from deliberate practice, from persistence through discomfort. Not because struggle is noble, but because struggle is formative. It shapes the very abilities required for stability and growth. Ease and attractive effort is transformative, and it's trouble in your house. It is this, and those who understand this stop chasing what is merely convenient. They begin valuing what is constructive, even when demanding. They recognize that difficulty is not opposition, but preparation to both trouble in your house. It is it's a simply human behavior. It fuels ambition, deepens connection, drives creativity, and gives color to experience. It gives color to experience. Without it, life would feel mechanical, distant, empty. The same force that enriches life can just as easily distort perception, influence judgment, and quietly redirect decisions in ways we barely notice until consequences arrive, because emotion is persuasive. It does not argue. It does not reason. It simply feels true. When excitement rises, everything appears possible. When fear takes hold, everything feels threatening. When desire intensifies, logic can fade into the background. The mind, under emotional influence, does not always seek accuracy. It seeks alignment with the feeling itself. That is where awareness becomes essential. A feeling can be real without being reliable. It can be intense without being informative. See, this could be convincing without being correct, yet many decisions are made at the exact peak of emotional intensity when perspective is most narrowed and objectivity most fragile. So, in those moments, people often believe they are seeing clearly when in reality they are seeing through the lens of a temporary internal state. Excitement, for example, has a remarkable ability to magnify benefits while minimizing risks. The trouble in your house, everything looks brighter, easier, more promising. Caution feels unnecessary. Doubt feels irrational. But excitement is not evidence, it is energy. Valuable, motivating, but incomplete. Fear operates with equal power. It exaggerates threats, accelerates urgency, and creates the illusion that immediate action is required for safety. Under fear, retreat can feel like wisdom, avoidance like strategy. Yet fear is designed for protection, not prediction. It reacts faster than reason, often before facts are fully understood. Desire bridges its own distortions. It narrows attention toward what is wanted and away from what is relevant. It creates momentum, sometimes overwhelming momentum, that can overpower reflection. What satisfies the immediate urge appears disproportionately important. The long-term implications struggle to compete with present emotion. None of this suggests emotion is an enemy. Emotion is information, but it is not the full story. It signals internal states, priorities, reactions. The most trouble in your house. It highlights what matters to us, but interpreting emotion without the balance of reflection can lead to decisions driven more by intensity than by insight. The difficulty is that emotional influence is rarely obvious from within. While experiencing it, everything feels justified, reasonable, even inevitable. The mind constructs narratives that support the feeling, reinforcing its authority. Contradictory evidence is often ignored or discounted, and because emotion feels authentic, its guidance can seem unquestionably valid. This is why separation is so critical. Not suppression, not denial, separation, the ability to experience emotion fully while preventing it from seizing control of judgment, the ability to say, this is what I feel, but what do I think? The ability to introduce space between reaction and decision. That space restores balance. With distance, excitement can be evaluated, fear can be examined, desire can become manageable, but what felt urgent can become negotiable. Perspective widens, reason re-enters, choices regain stability. The emotional mastery is not emotional absence. It is the capacity to recognize when a feeling is shaping perception, when it is amplifying or distorting interpretation, when it is pushing for action that may not align with long-term interests. It is a discipline of refusing to let temporary internal weather dictate permanent external consequences. Bitter, how often regret carries a familiar reflection. I was caught up in the moment. The phrase itself reveals a mechanism, judgment temporarily overtaken by emotion, not lack of intelligence, not lack of intelligence, not lack of capability, simply lack of separation. And separation is a skill built through awareness, through deliberate pauses, through questioning internal urgency, through recognizing that the strongest feeling in a moment is not automatically the wisest guide for action. Emotion adds richness to life, but clarity directs life. And those who learn to distinguish between feeling and fact, between internal intensity and external reality, gain something invaluable, the ability to act with intention rather than reaction. Awareness is not a single realization. It is not a switch that flips once and remains permanently illuminated. It is a discipline, a way of moving through the world with eyes open, mind engaged, and assumptions constantly examined. Many people imagine clarity as something that arrives suddenly, a breakthrough moment, a flash of understanding. But lasting clarity is built quietly, day after day, through deliberate attention, because distraction is relentless. The load competes aggressively for your focus, your reaction, your energy. Opinions, influences, pressures, attractions, they arrive from every direction, often louder and faster than your own thoughts. But becomes easy to drift, to absorb ideas without cultivated awareness. It becomes easy to drift, to absorb ideas without questioning them, to adopt priorities without consciously choosing them. And drifting rarely feels like drifting. It feels like living, like responding, like moving forward. Yet motion without awareness can carry a person far from their intended direction while creating the comforting illusion of progress. That is why awareness must be active, intentional, contention illusion of renewal. It begins with observation about the primal in your house. It is the patterns in your own behavior, recognizing what consistently captures your attention, identifying what triggers strong reactions, seeing where time and energy actually go rather than where you imagine they go. This kind of observation is not judgmental. It is informative. It reveals the invincible forces shaping daily decisions. Most people operate on habit far more than they realize. Automatic responses, repeated routines, familiar reactions. The brain, efficient by design, conserves effort by relying on established patterns, but efficiency can create blindness. What becomes familiar often escapes scrutiny. What is repeated often feels correct simply because it is repeated. The awareness interrupts that automation. It asks, why am I doing this? Is this still serving me? Is this choice deliberate or inherited? These questions are deceptively simple, yet profoundly disruptive to unconscious living. They transform routine into reflection, reaction into evaluation. Awareness also requires intellectual humility. Then the willingness to accept that perception can be incomplete, that assumptions can be flawed, that confidence does not guarantee correctness. Without humility, the mind defends its existing beliefs rather than examining them. It seeks validation instead of understanding. It resists new information that threatens established narratives. But growth demands flexibility. And mind committed to awareness remains curious. It attains alternative perspectives. It recognizes that certainty without examination can become a subtle form of ignorance. Awareness is not knowing everything. It is remaining open to seeing more. There is also the matter of internal awareness. Understanding not only external influences, but internal drivers, emotions, biases, fears, desires, recognizing how mood shapes interpretation, how fatigue affects patience, about how insecurity alters judgment. Without this internal visibility, individuals may misattribute the decisions to logic when they are heavily influenced by transient states. Awareness creates separation between experience and identity. Instead of being swept along by every thought or feeling, you begin observing them. instead of automatically trusting every internal impulse you evaluated. This distance strengthens agency. It restores choice. But awareness requires consistency. It cannot be activated only during major decisions or moments of crisis. By then, patterns may already be entrenched, momentum already established. Hey, daily awareness, small reflections, small corrections, small observations prevents the slow accumulation of misalignment. Tiny adjustments prevent dramatic recoveries. A slight shift in thinking today may avert significant consequences tomorrow. A brief reflection may expose a subtle error before it compounds. Awareness operates like continuous course correction, ensuring direction remains aligned even as conditions change, and conditions always change. Unexpected challenges, evolving priorities, shifting environments. Life is dynamic. Static thinking struggles a dynamic real. It is awareness enables adaptation without disorientation, without loss of clarity. Yet awareness is often resisted because it demands effort. To be challenges comfort, it questions familiarity, it disrupts automatic certainty. But the alternative, unconscious navigation, leaves direction vulnerable to chance, influence, and impulse. So consider this carefully. Are you actively observing your patterns, your reactions, your decisions? Or are you moving through routines that operate largely unexamined? Bend. It is a quiet mislead that has cost many people is a quiet misunderstanding that has cost many people their focus, their energy, and sometimes their peace. The belief that boundaries are barriers to freedom. That saying no is limitation, that protecting your space is selfish, that allowing unrestricted access to your time, attention, and emotions is somehow a sign of openness or strength. But boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They are safeguards. They are the invisible structures that protect what is valuable from what is merely available. Without them, everything gains entry, distractions, pressures, unnecessary obligations, draining influences. And when everything is permitted, nothing remains protected. Every day, forces compete for your resources, not just material resources, but mental and emotional ones. Your attention, your patience, your energy, your clarity. These are finite whether acknowledged or not. Yet many people distribute them carelessly, responding to every demand, accommodating every request, engaging every distraction until exhaustion becomes normal and focus becomes fragile. That is not generosity. That is leakage, because anything unguarded will be consumed. Time will be filled. Attention will be captured. Energy will be depleted, not always by malicious intent, but by the natural pull of a world that rewards immediacy and access. Without deliberate boundaries, your priorities are easily replaced by the priorities of others, often without you noticing the exchange. Boundaries preserve direction, but they define what deserves your engagement and what does not. May prevent impulse and external pressure from constantly reshaping your day. They allow concentration to deepen, effort to compound, progress to stabilize. Without them, life becomes reactive, a series of responses rather than a sequence of intentional actions. Many resist boundaries because they fear discomfort. Saying no can feel awkward. Declining invitations can feel rude. The limiting availability can feel like rejection, but discomfort is often the price of self-respect. The temporary unease of establishing limits prevents the far greater cost of chronic distraction and resentment, because unexpressed boundaries do not disappear. They transform into frustration, into fatigue, into the subtle sense of being pulled in too many directions. People often feel overwhelmed, not because demands are extraordinary, but because limits were never clearly defined. Clarity reduces conflict. When you communicate what you can and cannot accept, what you will and will not prioritize, interactions become simpler. Expectations stabilize, misunderstandings decrease. Boundaries are not instruments of distance. They are tools of definitions of distance. They are tools of definition. They tell the world how to engage with you. More importantly, they tell you how to engage with the world. They force conscious choice. They prevent automatic compliance. They create space for reflection rather than reflexive agreement. Consider the impact of weak boundary. Every interruption gains authority. Every distraction becomes urgent. Every distraction becomes urgent. Every request feels mandatory. The most trouble in your house. It is the mind struggles to maintain depth when constantly pulled toward novelty or obligation. Progress fragments a trouble in your house. It is the tension scatters. Stress accumulates. Strong boundaries reverse that pattern. They protect cognitive space. They preserve emotional stability. They allow sustained engagement with what truly matters. They transform time from something that happens to you into something directed by you. But boundaries require internal permission, the permission to value your focus, to protect your energy in your house. It is to accept that not everything deserves access. Without this internal conviction, external pressures easily override intention. The desire to please, to accommodate, to avoid friction can quietly dismantle necessary limits. Yet every meaningful pursuit demands protection. The most trouble in your house, it is to see goals require uninterrupted attention. Growth requires sustained effort. Clarity requires mental space. Boundaries create the conditions under which these become possible. They are not restrictions on potential. They are enablers of it. They are adaptable, responsive to context, aligned with evolving priorities, but they must be deliberate, conscious, chosen, rather than inherited from habit or expectation. So reflect honestly. Where is your attention leaking? Where is your energy being consumed without return? Where are you saying yes out of reflex rather than intention? There is a particular kind of pressure that rarely announces itself as pressure. It does not shout. It does not threaten. It simply whispers with urgency, creating the unsettling sensation that something must be decided now, acted upon immediately, embraced without delay. It arrives wrapped in phrases that sound reasonable, even persuasive. Time is running out. This won't last. You have to move quickly. And before you realize it, your thinking begins to accelerate. Perspective narrows. Perspective narrows. And the doubt feels inconvenient. Reflection feels like risk. The mind responding to perceived urgency shifts into a mode. The most trouble in your house. It is designed for speed rather than accuracy. The possibility that patience might be the wiser response quietly fades into the background. Urgency is powerful because it bypasses analysis. When people feel rushed, they evaluate less, question less, consider less. They become more susceptible to influence, more likely to accept incomplete information, more willing to trade long-term clarity for immediate relief. The pressure itself becomes the dominant reality, overshadowing the substance of the decision. Hey, but not all urgency is real. Some situations genuinely require immediate action. Danger, emergencies, fleeting opportunities with verifiable constraints. That many instances of urgency are constructed, exaggerated, or entirely artificial. They exist not because time is truly limited, but because speed benefits someone or something other than you. The false urgency thrives on emotional activation. It is the false urgency thrives on emotional activation. It is the persuades by implying that hesitation equals loss, that reflection equals weakness, that careful thinking is incompatible with success. And under that influence, people often abandon their natural caution. But consider something fundamental. Truth does not fear examination. Genuine opportunities do not collapse under reasonable scrutiny. Decisions that are sound today remain sound after thoughtful consideration tomorrow. If something cannot withstand a pause, its stability deserves questioning. Pressure is not proof. The intensity of a moment does not determine the validity of an action. Yet the human mind often equates urgency with importance. Something feels urgent, therefore it must be significant. Something demands immediate attention, therefore it must be valuable. This is a cognitive illusion. Urgency is a sensation, not a fact. It is an experience generated by perception. For in your house, it's the framing. And like any sensation, it can be manipulated, misinterpreted, or entirely misleading. That is why awareness is critical. The moment you feel rushed, The moment you sense that internal acceleration, that subtle push toward immediate decision, a question should arise almost automatically. Why must this happen now? Not as defiance, not as resistance, but as clarity seeking context. Often the answer reveals everything. Sometimes there is genuine necessity, but frequently there is only perceived pressure, unsupported by objective constraint. The realization itself restores balance. It slows the mind. It reopens perspective. It allows reason to re-enter a space dominated moments earlier by urgency. Patience is a strategic advantage in your house. It protects against error, against manipulation, against unnecessary commitment. It creates room for information, for reflection, for evaluation of consequences that speed tends to obscure. Those who are comfortable with patience are far more difficult to mislead. But so who are not controlled by tempo. They understand that rush decisions often favor the creator of the pressure, not the recipient of it. They recognize that urgency can be manufactured, that speed can be weaponized, that the fear of delay can become a powerful persuader. The most trouble in your house, this does not mean rejecting action. It means rejecting unconscious acceleration. It means distinguishing between genuine necessity and psychological pressure. It means refusing to equate speed with wisdom. And this requires discipline, the discipline to tolerate certainty, discipline to tolerate uncertainty a little longer, to endure the discomfort of not immediately resolving a decision, to trust that clarity often improves with time rather than deteriorates. Because many costly mistakes share a common origin. I felt like I had no time. But feeling is not fact. And reclaiming control over tempo is reclaiming control over judgment. So the next time urgency presses against your thoughts, the next time something insists on immediacy, resist the instinct to rush and instead lean into awareness.